We've had some lovely weather and it seems to have all changed, and I could really have used it being nice today. But anyway, because I want to talk about the stars tonight, and we're not talking about those celebrity ones that you find on YouTube or wherever there is these days. I'm talking about those things in the sky that we could see last night but can't see tonight. Many of you will know that Keith and I were missionaries in South Africa. And there's not much that I miss about South Africa, actually. You'll be surprised to hear that. Miss some people, miss the animals in the Kruger National Park. But a lot of it I don't really miss. I miss the ministry too, but there's a lot of it I don't really miss. But one thing that I probably miss more than anything else is the night skies there. The night skies there were just phenomenal, especially if you had a night where we had what they called rotational load shedding, where because there wasn't enough electricity for the whole country, what they would do is they would take turns for different places at different times to have their power cut off. And at one stage, it was like 4 times a day for about 12 and a half hours. So in 2.5 or 4 hour blocks that you just have no electricity. And on the days when there was load shedding, it was horrible because where we were staying, it was really hot. It could get up to 47 degrees in summer. And when you didn't have an air con in that weather, it was rather horrible. But the thing was that sometimes when we had load shedding and it was too hot inside, we'd just smother ourselves in anti-mosquito stuff, repellent, and we'd go outside and we'd just look at the stars. And let me tell you something, they were magnificent. Looked a bit like that, really, didn't it, Keith? Yeah. And one time we were doing a week-long mission in a little village, like really in the middle of nowhere. And after church the one night, we went back to the pastor's house for some refreshments before our 1.5 hour long trip home on really dodgy roads. And as we were walking to the car, we had some people with us at the time, and as we were walking to the car, we looked up into the sky and just saw this. Wow. Even now, just to think about it, it looked a bit like that, but you could see the Milky Way as clearly as anything. You could see stars so clearly, more than I'd ever seen before. And we're all standing there looking at the sky, at this beautiful sky, and the pastor comes along, and he says to us, "What's wrong? What's wrong? We said, "No, we're just looking at the stars." And it was like, and he carried on. Well, for him, this was a norm. He saw it every night, but we didn't. And it was really, really beautiful. And this week, when we've had some clear skies, a couple of times I've just looked out and tried to look up at the stars, past the street lights to the stars. And I thought, wow, they look quite beautiful. But I must say something. They're a pale comparison to what I saw in South Africa. But it doesn't matter what I can see because they're still there. And each one of those stars was put there by God himself. And I just wonder, when God put the stars there, what was he thinking? Because for a lot of reasons for us here on earth, we can't see real reason for them other than their beauty. And there's a lot of passages in the Bible that talks about it, but really, what's their purpose? Well, do you know, I've been looking at the Bible a bit, and I've seen that there's quite a few reasons in the Bible for the stars. And I know that God created the heavens and the earth. He created the stars, and the nice thing that I see is that at the end of day 3, when he created the sun and the moon and the stars, he looked at it and he said, "It's good." You can just imagine saying, "Did good today, didn't I?" Oh no, we did good today, didn't we? It was, and I can just imagine that. Yeah, that was a good idea, kind of thing. I look at giraffes and think, well, although I love them, were they such a good idea? But stars, they're amazing. You know, when God planned it, he planned the stars for a reason. And one of the things is that Isaiah 40 verse 26 tells us, look up into the heavens. It actually tells us to look at the heavens. It says, who created all the stars? He brings them out like an army, one after the other, calling each one by name. Well, we don't even know how many there are, and yet he knows each one's name. Because of his great power and incomparable strength, not one single one is missing. Now, I sometimes looked, especially when we were in South Africa, we used to look up and try and discern where the southern star was, and I've sometimes looked up to look for Orion's belt and all these things, and I'm hopeless at it. We used to have an app on our phone that we could lift up and we'd see which star was which and which galaxy was which, but quite honestly, there were times that I'd think, well, could that be that, no, there's one of the stars missing. Well, it wasn't that it was missing, it just was that I couldn't see it. But you know what? Each one of those stars tells us something about God. And Psalm 19 verse 1 to 4 says, the heavens proclaim the glory of God. The skies display his craftsmanship. Day after day they continue to speak. Night after night they make him known. They speak about us. They speak without a sound or a word. Their words are never heard. Yet their message has gone throughout earth and their words to all the world. They tell a story that sometimes we don't even understand what they are. And you know, people can look at the sky and know. I mean, let's face it, you can't really look at creation. I sometimes look at creation and think, how can people say there's no God? Look at those stars and think, how can you say there's no God? That didn't just happen as a random accident. God did it. Why did he do it? You know, I believe that the stars point us towards God as well. So not only are they there to declare his glory, because let's face it, they do, but I think they're there to point us to God. And, you know, sometimes I see that people use the stars to predict their futures and they read their horoscopes and all sorts of things. That's not what I'm talking about here tonight, so please don't get me wrong. I don't believe in worshipping the stars. I don't believe in worshipping creation. I believe in worshipping the Creator who created the stars. You know, in the way that God points us, uses the stars to point us to himself, I even see that, you know, God took Abraham outside and he showed him something. He said, look at the stars. Look how many stars there are. And do you know what? I'm going to bless you with more descendants than there are stars in the sky. Wow, that's a lot of descendants. And especially because he would have been able to see them like we saw them in Africa because there wasn't street lights around. In Matthew 2, we see that God uses a star to point wise men to where he is. He brings them miles and miles and miles, and they follow the star. It must have been something different to what they were used to, because I don't believe that these people who were wise men would have followed something if they didn't think it was something unusual. God used something unusual in his galaxy to point to himself, to point to Jesus lying in a manger. I always say that it says that, you know, they followed the star and that it took them to Bethlehem, and there they found Jesus there. And I wonder, how did they find Jesus in Bethlehem by just a star? Was it shining brightly as you see in some of these movies on him? I just wonder. These are things, you know, God, why did you use a star? Because he could. In Matthew 24, we read this, and I found this quite interesting. It says that when the stars fall from the sky, you'll know that he's coming again. Not in those exact words, but that's what it says. So not only does do the stars point to what he's going to do or what he's done, it points to that he's coming again. It tells us, when you don't see them anymore, know that I'm coming again. Know that I'm on my way. And I just think, okay, God, you're trying to tell me something about these stars. I don't know if any of you are aware. For some reason, I don't quite know why, I've suddenly been getting on Facebook little pages that are coming up and telling me all about the stars and the astrological events that are going to be happening in the month. In February, there was a hexagons. Oh no, don't worry about that one. There was planets that aligned for the first time. All 7 planets were aligned for the first time. There was a snow full moon. There was Saturn's rings were clearly visible. Mars kissed Venus, apparently. It also kissed the moon, apparently. We've got photos that were taken over Reading of northern lights that were happening. And then I've also got another pop up, and it's telling me that April's supposed to be just as much of a month like February was with things. There's apparently going to be a micro pink moon. I don't know what it is. It's got something to do with Venus, I think. I don't quite know. There's apparently going to be a fantastic meteor shower with up to 18 stars seen an hour, falling an hour. That's an amazing meteor shower. And it's going to go on like all night. But this one's the one that I think I like the most. Apparently there's going to be something called a triple conjunction of a smiley face. Apparently there's going to be a waning lunar moon that will align with Venus and Saturn, and it will reveal a smiley face. Wonder what God's trying to say with that. I do know this, though, that the stars declare God's love for us. In both Isaiah and Psalms, straight after talking about look at the heavens and look how God's made the stars, it goes on to talk about God caring for us. Psalm 8 verse 3 says, "When I look at the night sky and see the work of your finger, the moon and the stars you set in place, what are mere mortals that you should think about them, human beings that you should care for them? Yet you made them a little lower than God and crowned them with glory and honor." So even those stars, God doesn't think as much of them as he does of us. Isaiah 40 says that, tells us how magnificent God is and how he lines up these stars. And then it says, how can you not understand? How can you think that God doesn't understand your troubles? Or how can you think that he doesn't know what state you're in? That he's an everlasting God. That he who created the earth never grows weak or weary. And those that wait on him will renew their strength, and they'll rise up with wings as eagles. They'll run and not grow weary. They'll walk and not faint. Psalm 147 verse 3 tells us that the same God who binds up the brokenhearted and bandages their wounds counts the stars and calls them by name. God can name each star, and yet he doesn't think that is more important than binding up your broken heart or healing your hurts and wounds. So I was thinking, oh, maybe we should just go out and look at the night sky. But number one, it's not dark yet because it's still summer here in England. But number two, it's a bit overcast today. But next time you're outside and you see that the stars are shining, take a look at them. Take a look at them and try and remember that God placed each one of those. He knows each one of their names. But not only that, he knows each one of our names. And he knows every hair on our head. The stars aren't the only thing he knows everything about. He knows everything about us. And he cares for each one of us. And just remember, we're not worshipping the stars. We're not worshipping creation. We're worshipping the creator of all things in heaven and on earth. So now all we've got to do now is wait for the clouds to disappear so we can go and look at those magnificent stars. Thank you.